Hello and welcome back to another Fear the Walking Dead video, and today I'll be talking about the top 10 worst episodes on Fear the Walking Dead. And with the show now over, this will be the definitive list for me. And this was quite hard to make, I just have to say, because most of Fear is trash, so this is the trashiest of the trash. So let's dive right into this with number 10, Season 7, Episode 14. And this episode was meant to be the big conflict episode. This is the final episode of the Strand villain arc, and it's where Alicia and Strand finally butt heads. Or you think that, and there'll be a big battle. No. Everyone gets outside the tower, then Alicia and Daniel go in, and then Alicia suddenly takes Strand hostage, and then she gets sick, and then Strand flips sides, and then Wes is the big villain suddenly. And it's just really disappointing because the entire season was building up to this episode, just for this episode to play out the way it did. It's just a massive disappointment, and what doesn't help is that Strand flip-flops back into a villain right at the end so that the tower can be compromised suddenly for the next episode. It is just so dumb and so poorly written. Number 9 is Season 4, Episode 16, and this is another end of arc episode, and is yet another massive disappointment. Well, this episode didn't have as much build-up as the previous one did, but it's just so dumb that the entire premise of this episode is that everyone's dying from poisoning, and Morgan has to go get everyone alcohol, and the whole premise is everyone's dying. Morgan's gone out to go get the crazy woman, and he ends up fighting her, but then he indirectly kills her, so he doesn't break his code at the time. It's just a very dumbly written episode, and the whole ending is just so annoying, with Morgan being like, everyone, let's go to Alexandria, after promising everyone for half a season. And then on the way there, he's like, how about, no, we don't want to do that. Let's go and set up our own base and do absolutely nothing. Even though multiple characters have expressed the desire to go to Alexandria throughout this half season, Morgan just completely goes, nope, I'm not taking you there. I'm going to refuse to tell you. It is just so annoying what Morgan does in this episode. And he does really ruin it. It's just a very poor ending to a very mixed season. Number 8 is Season 5, Episode 16, and I dislike this episode for many reasons. One, how quickly everyone gets up after getting to the Gulch, and then deciding to be like, okay, Virginia's gone, but let's go make the Gulch our home. That really annoyed me. There is also lots of little things. I dislike how Grace assumed she was dying of radiation sickness when she was actually pregnant. Never came across her mind that she could be pregnant. That was just a random plot twist. Also, Virginia tries to kill Morgan and then gives up after her gun failing. Really dislike that, but the main reason I dislike this episode is that they call Virginia and then they decide to make it their home. Why bother at that point? It's just so annoying, and you think it's going to be a big fight, but no, they get there and they're just like, okay, bam. It's just so annoying. This episode is just a massive disappointment. They're building up these key people and then they just have this random episode right here. It's just so annoying. I know the key arc goes into Season 6 and it's definitely one of the best arcs in this show, but the start of few episodes are just such a slog to get through. Number 7 is Season 5, Episode 15, and the whole reason I dislike this one is I really dislike POV camera shots like Blair Witch Project, and it gives us a whole new character that we're meant to care about, then they suddenly die, and he dies in the most stupid way possible. This episode is just video wars in the apocalypse. It is just so annoying. They tried to go for something interesting and different, but it just did not work. This was such a dumb premise for an episode. Number 6 is Season 7, Episode 9, and this episode is here just because of how bad Alicia Carey's performance in this episode is. She's a great actor, but what the hell did they do with her in Season 7? Like, I really dislike Season 7 was really bad of it, with introducing a character for an episode and then killing them off, and this is where it just got too much for me. We got introduced to this deaf musician, and we got all this backstory, it's just wasted. The villain in this episode is comically bad, and I really dislike the Alicia being sick, fainting, all this stuff. This episode is just very boring and filler, and I can't say anything positive about this episode. And I can see why they did this episode on the same day as Episode 10. This episode couldn't be by itself. Number 5 is Season 7, Episode 10. As I mentioned it couldn't be by itself, and neither could this episode. There's a reason why they were put together. This episode is a Charlie romance episode. It is acted poorly. The plot is abysmal. It's so weird that you have Arlie being like, okay, I gotta go find this like rare butterfly, immediately finds it. And then you have this stupid romance, and it's a bit noncy, their romance. The dialogue is very bad, with Arlie being like, oh, I'm 16, and then Charlie being like, oh, I'm 13. Just so you could know how old these characters are. So you could be like, oh, it's not as bad as it seems, but it's still pretty bad. I just really dislike this episode. The whole premise of the episode is terrible. Just focusing on Charlie to a romance and then saying she's 13. It's just sus. This episode is also the episode that sealed John Dorie Sr.'s fate, and he had to be quickly killed off after this because just being around Charlie gave him radiation poisoning, but then Charlie apparently survives it later on. But it's just, this episode just is so wrong in every single level. But one good thing about this episode, I like the setting. It takes place in a city, so that looked quite Last of Us and cool. Moving on to number 4 is Season 8, Episode 11. And this is the episode that killed off Troy after redeeming him. And then they bring back Crane for absolutely no reason, just so that he could be the new villain temporarily. And then Crane is the most comically bad villain in all of TV, unable to kill a couple walkers and standing there just to be ripped out like a sister after just doing a little info dump on how Madison survived Season 4. That was his whole purpose. This episode is just so bad on so many levels. I just really absolutely hate the sudden change of Madison being like, oh no, bam, you're dead. It's just such a bad episode. And if they just didn't kill off Troy, I believe this episode wouldn't be this high in the top 10. It might be an honorable mention, but it's just killing off Troy like that really did ruin this episode. It was still bad without it, but just that one moment just put it so high. And at number 3 is Season 8, Episode 10. And the whole reason this is above the episode that just killed off Troy, I'm still fuming about it, is because this episode's whole premise is to find Alicia, and you get this cool, like, original crew from the original 3 seasons go off to find Alicia, just to find out it's Tracy's mum, and Madison goes out by the end of this episode, so it makes the episode absolutely pointless. Also, there's apparently a big fight in this episode, which we do not get to see. It's this big kind of conflict between Troy's army and Luciana's army, and we just do not see it, and all we hear is that Troy's army just fight like savages. They don't care if they live or die. They absolutely destroyed us. Because we saw any of that, this episode is where the budget is most obviously bad, and it is just a massive disappointment. But moving on to number 2, Season 8, Episode 7. I absolutely hate this episode, and I could say this is a flip between this being number 1 or number 2, but the only reason, start off right now, the only reason this episode is in number 2, not number 1, is because of the Troy scene at the end. I really like the last 12 minutes or so with Troy. That's the best part of this episode, very entertaining. But if you get into that, is a slog. It's so badly done. The budget is so bad with Strand. I absolutely hate Strand in Season 8 because of this episode. Strand is so annoying. Being reintroduced to Strand is just so bad with him being like, oh, Madison, I'm going to throw you out, do all this. I'm going to give Madison up to Troy. But then, oh, and is that Daniel I see? Let's run away. It's just so dumb. And this episode also reuses lots of shots from previous episodes and seasons. This episode is the most egregious I've seen on TV of reusing shots just to make it cheaper. I could just say so many bad things about this episode, but we need to move on. So moving on to number 1 is Season 7, Episode 15, the 100th episode, and Alicia's final episode. And this is easily the worst episode on Fear the Walking Dead, because I can't say one positive thing or one thing I like about this episode. I absolutely think this episode is trash, just because they have Alicia passing out constantly, just so she can teleport around these locations. Also, it's so dumb that you have Alicia basically dying, and all her friends are like, oh yeah, we're going to take you to the tower, and we're going to let you go into the tower by yourself, even though she can't stay conscious long enough to get to the tower in the first place. It is basically just so badly written, and I absolutely hate what they did to Alicia in this episode. Just her goodbye is just so badly done. So everyone's on the boat, Alicia's like, I can't get on the boat, I'll die, and then someone will turn, and stuff like that. And Alicia pushes Strand off, he waves everyone away, and then she collapses soon on the beach, and everyone's still within eyesight, so no one decides to go back for Alicia to check if she's actually alive, or to give her a proper burial. It's just so disrespectful to the character of Alicia Clark, this episode is. And they treat it like this big 100th episode special. No, a 100th episode special is what they did in The Walking Dead, where they pay homages to episode 1. This episode was just so focused on trying to write out Alicia in the worst way possible. I just really dislike the ending for Alicia. I'm happy she came back in the final episode. But this episode, if this was our final episode, it would have completely ruined Alicia's character, in my opinion. And that is my list and my personal opinion. So please tell me down below, what are your top 10 worst episodes? Do you agree with me or do you disagree? I imagine quite a lot of you have disagreed because of how bad many of Fear the Walking Dead's episodes are. So goodbye, peace out, I'll talk to you later.